I know my wife, and I know that she wants something special, something that is extremely important to her. Susan dressed in her sexiest outfit, a tight red dress with a low neckline and short hemline. She adorned it with jewelry designed to emphasize her incredible natural beauty and to remind her of our shared past. The brooch I'd given her on our 15th anniversary, the necklace I'd given her on her 3rd Mother's Day, and finally the earrings, my first gift to her on our honeymoon. The high heels of her red shoes visually lengthened and accentuated Susan's already long legs, covered in the finest fishnet stockings. She cooked my favorite dinner and was ready to fulfill my every wish from the moment I stepped through the door. All of this went far beyond the lengths she would normally go to when she wanted something from me. Of course, I've always tried to be a generous husband, but I'm sorry. I don't print money after all. I have spent most of my career as a private personal injury attorney, and while this has allowed our family a certain level of comfort, there are still some limits. Such an extraordinary level of effort on her part can only mean that Susan intends to ask for something that goes far beyond normal limits. I know my wife and realize that what she wants is far more than we can afford. Susan has been a wonderful homemaker for many years and has raised our 2 children, who have now left home and are in college. She is a good wife and mother who cooks beautifully and tries to keep her body in shape. She is generous with love and affection in bed, has always been the first to volunteer to help the children with their schoolwork, and because of her, I feel loved and appreciated. However, over the years, she has tried many activities and hobbies that can dispel the boredom of a stay-at-home mom, for example, bird watching, selling cosmetics, writing, and much, much more. When she wanted to try a particularly expensive hobby, she would go all out for it, which, by the way, is pretty much how it was now. When Susan wanted to go back to work after the kids left home, it was a lot easier. She knew I wouldn't have to be convinced, because for once, she would be bringing money home instead of spending it. But it's been 2 years since she started working again. That's a lot longer than it usually takes for her to get bored with a new occupation, put it on the back shelf, and start looking for something new. For whatever reason, this next hobby of hers took too long. I know my wife, and I know what she's like when she has a new obsession. Susan serves dinner, and over the meal, we casually discuss how my day went. This is always a necessary part of pre-meeting maneuvers. Trying to get what she really wants from her directly will only spoil our pleasant and leisurely dinner, since she herself thinks she knows the process to a fine point. One day, during a phase of personal self-improvement, Susan read a book about negotiation. It was her new hobby, which fortunately did not last long. What she learned from the book was that keeping a clear schedule, proper sequencing, and providing information only when she wanted it was the key to getting what she wanted. That may not be a bad strategy, but she's used it so often that I can see all her games and tricks a mile away. After dinner, she clears the table and invites me to sit with her in the living room. I sit down in my chair and she stands as usual. She is obviously going to defend with all her passion what she has come up with this time, so she needs the opportunity to strut around the room. Well, I know my wife, and I can pretty much imagine what this is going to be about. She will go on at length, telling me how this, I don't know what it is yet, will make her happy. I think she'll probably offer something in return: new golf clubs, promises of improving our financial well-being, opportunities to spend time and money on one of my favorite projects. Basically, something she thinks has appropriate value. If I agree to the proposal, she will happily jump on my lap and ask me to take her to bed immediately, promising as an additional reward the sexual pleasures that will match her scale of what she has achieved from me. If I say no, well, then I can expect a very cold, if not Arctic, atmosphere in the bedroom for weeks, if not months. And still she might try to act behind my back and then just apologize. Over the years, it's gotten easier for me to just say yes, knowing that she'll get bored before she gets too caught up in her next temporary mania. I know my wife, and I realize that today she will try her hardest to get a simple yes from me. Susan begins by talking about her job. She likes working there, but she says there is a new young manager who has recently joined her department and has taken a special interest in her. At first I nod, thinking Susan means that he wants to be her mentor, or that she's hoping for a promotion. I know that would mean an increase in her work hours and assume that she probably wants to reduce her responsibilities around the house. Then I realize that she's talking much more not about her job, but about this manager. He comes from a wealthy family. He's handsome, dresses well, travels a lot, and has the physique of an athlete. Using his famous last name and his own business acumen, this manager quickly rose through the ranks at her company. Susan trained him shortly after he started working there, and now he is her boss. She goes on and on about him, listing his many positive qualities. I know my wife and now realize what, or rather who, has become her new obsession. Susan then tells me that she has become close to her boss. She says she hadn't mentioned him before because she rarely talked about her work at all. As she talks about him, I remember seeing him once at a Christmas party. He came up and said hello to both of us then. At first glance, he seemed very friendly towards Susan, but he quickly disappeared into the crowd and I didn't think much of it. So, Susan continued, he flirted with her. At first, she thought it was just office flirting or a young man jokingly making ambiguous remarks about an older colleague. But there was more to it than that. It turns out that her young and daring boss has had his eye on her for a long time and recently told her of his intentions. Every year he goes on a weekend getaway to a tropical island, and this time he wants to take Susan with him. Not us, her. And my wife wants to go with him, so she needs a pass. From me. I know my wife, and I realize I'm watching, as if in slow motion, my marriage come to an end. Susan sees my face stiffen and immediately switches to another tactic. She starts to insist. She was a virgin when we got married, and she wants to know what it's like to be with another man. He's a real gentleman. This will be our little secret, and no one else will ever know about anything ever again. It'll be a one-time thing. She loves me, and nothing will change that. It will be a new, exciting adventure for both of us. She'll come home completely refreshed and drown me in her caresses. It's not my fault, and it's not about me. It's just sex. If I love her, I'll let her have it. All of these arguments, one after another, bounce off me like peas off a wall, and at some point she realizes it's not working. Then she moves on to the bargaining stage. I can get my own left pass. No 2 passes, no 1, and no restrictions. She'll let me buy that boat I've wanted for a long time. No? Then he will buy it for me. He will provide and pay for me to take a fancy vacation with a very friendly companion. He can greatly benefit my career and Susan's career. Sexually, she will fulfill my every whim as I desire, for the rest of our lives. She will never say no to me again, in bed or out of it. She'll give me anything and everything I want. I tell her the most important thing I want is a faithful wife. But, I know my wife, and I can see she's unwavering in her stubbornness. Susan is beginning to tell me that she is doing me the honorable and decent thing because she is openly letting me know what she wants. She's asking my permission, not just cheating on me behind my back. She wants her pass because by using it, she will remain faithful to me. She wants to give the pass to me so we can each have a new experience while remaining faithful. She asks to do this so she doesn't have to cheat in secret. I tell her that she doesn't have to cheat at all. She just wants it like a little girl wants a new toy, a handsome Ken. Now Susan's getting angry. She calls me a hypocrite because I slept with others before her, as if the vows we made at the altar didn't matter. She calls me selfish because she spent decades of her life and the best of her younger years on me and our family while I pursued a career, as if I was fucking lucky to work long hours at a job I wasn't too fond of. She calls me a fossilized, backward modern man because I don't want to open our marriage, as if fidelity is some fickle trend and which is in and out of fashion. I sit back, watching nonchalantly as she rushes around the room, waving her arms around and spewing her anger at me. I know my wife, and I realize she's not going to let this go. Finally, Susan runs out of steam and gives up. I tell her I can't stop her. I know she will eventually decide to go behind my back, as she has done so many times before when a new obsession has completely taken over her thoughts. I tell her that asking permission without caring if it is granted is still cheating and treason, and that I don't give my wife that permission. I tell her that if she leaves with him, she shouldn't come back. She won't be welcome here. Susan glares angrily at me, but says nothing. Unable to get what she wants, she snorts irritably, turns sharply on her heels, stomps up the stairs, and slams the door shut in our bedroom. My shoulders slump doomfully. Grief has settled into my heart, and I have nothing to do now, so I'm alone with my mournful thoughts. My anger and sadness have no outlet yet. I weave into the spare bedroom, undress and crawl under the covers, then toss and turn from side to side for the rest of this long, dark, and lonely night. I know my wife and realize I'm going to have a hard time falling asleep that night. When I wake up, Susan is already gone. Her suitcase is gone. Her warm clothes are gone too, and she hasn't taken her phone. Along with its charger, it's lying on the bedside table. So alas, I couldn't contact her even if I wanted to, and I don't want to. Under the phone is a note Susan left for me. In it, she expresses her hope, if not certainty, that I'll change my mind when I've had time to think seriously about it. She explains that she'll be back Monday night. She also writes that she loves me and hopes that while she's away, I'll use the affair pass she issued, which, as I've told her repeatedly, I neither accept nor want to receive. She assures me that she will come back just as loving as she left, if not more so. For some reason, she mistakenly believes that she will still be a valuable treasure that I would be glad to have back, rather than trash that I would rather get rid of. Well, her delusion is understandable. Up until now, she had been my greatest treasure. But now, she's not. Right now, Susan is on an airplane and I am here. It's Friday morning. I called the office and left a message that I would not be there, as there is more important work I need to do. I couldn't give vent to my emotions last night, but now I have nothing but rage in my heart and the time I need. The next thing I do is call an old friend of mine and thus set the wheels and gears of the legal machine in motion. He starts drafting the divorce papers. I send him a copy of our prenuptial agreement, which includes, among other things, an adultery clause, as well as information about the assets she and I have in common. I ask him to be fair, given the fact that Susan is the mother of my children, but in no way be overly generous to her. Given the structure of our assets and the details of the prenuptial agreement, the division should be very simple. I know my wife and remember that she never paid much attention to legal details. Susan was strict about keeping the house in order. It was the only thing she really excelled at. Over this weekend, it will be easy for me to find all of her things, pack them in bags and boxes, and send it all to storage. I want Susan to realize as soon as she opens the door that this is no longer her home. The job of packing and moving her stuff out turns out to be somewhat morally satisfying. It allows me to focus on something I can control. All of this takes most of the weekend, leaving my body so exhausted each night that it's all I can do to collapse into bed and pass out. At least my brain isn't plagued at night by endless and generally useless thoughts about where things have come to. Monday morning, I prepare myself for the confrontation ahead. I call our kids and inform them of what is to come. I don't go into details, but they now know that their mother has decided to cheat on me, after trying to get me to make our marriage open. They are smart kids. They know me, and they realize that there is no changing my mind on this issue. I cry with them and assure them that I love them with all my heart. At least she didn't try to poison the kids' relationship with me. I then call our closest friends, sharing the news with them, and they are all just shocked. I call my parents, and they, of course, are supportive. Finally, I call and tell Susan's parents everything, and they were horrified at what their daughter was up to. I know my wife and I know that no one would support her. Susan's plane will be landing soon. My friend stayed up half the night to do me a favor and worked painstakingly this weekend. He handed me all the necessary copies of documents in a simple but unmistakable envelope of heavy manila paper. I decided not to hand these papers to Susan at the airport. This is not out of any loyalty. I really hope she will be ashamed of her actions. After all, I was the one who made sure that a phone storm erupted in our usual social circle. Her phone, which she had purposely forgotten and which was now sitting on the hallway table, was flooded with text messages and voicemails from family, friends, and acquaintances condemning her. I didn't hand the papers to Susan at the airport because I want to see her face when she realizes how much this weekend cost her. In normal life, I am not a violent person, Perhaps my wife, who will be an ex in the near future, mistook my kindness for weakness. Perhaps she saw my generosity as a lack of will. But even a kind person can be driven to cruelty. Even a generous person can bang his fist on the table and exclaim, "I've had enough." I know my wife and I foresee that her life will soon become much less comfortable than what she is used to. Susan swings the door open and enters the house with a wide, serene smile on her radiant face. She is truly fresh and beautiful, and I feel a brief prick of regret over what is about to happen. But almost immediately I remember that it doesn't have to happen. It's already happened. She betrayed our vows. It was her own choice. She chose her young and attractive boss over me, her husband. She chose to destroy our history and our life together, even though I warned Susan of the imminent consequences of her actions. Her smile disappears, and her face itself stretches and stiffens when she sees our living room. It takes her a moment to realize what has changed in the house. Her still beautiful eyes flicker around, looking around the room and noticing the absence. Yes, she sees some things missing. The crystal vase she loved to put flowers in for birthdays and anniversaries, our wedding portrait, dear to her heart souvenirs from our travels together, and more. But much, huge, more painful is the lack of love. Even when we fought, even when I was sometimes angry with her, the strong bulwark between us was always love. But not now. I'm in no hurry to greet her. There is no tenderness in my manners now. I don't even say hello to her. But I hold in my hand the very envelope of heavy paper that is unmistakable, and which will show her with bitter precision how little she will have left when our paths part in different directions. I know my wife, and I can clearly see the tentacles of fear creeping inside her and spreading out to grip her heart with cold. Susan's eyes widen in panic. She begins to protest, to beg, to cry. I am impassive. She repeats the same arguments she made before she left, about how it was just meaningless sex, about her abiding love for me, and that she would do anything for me. I'm indifferent. She tries to remind me of our marriage, our children, our life together. I'm furious. I rise to my feet, struggling to contain my anger. I hiss through my teeth that I was the one who remembered these things, not her. I was the one who appreciated these things and everything she was just talking about. She didn't. I begged her not to throw it all away, not to go to him, but she blithely, selfishly refused. These were the best moments of my life, and now she's trying to use the memory of them as a bargaining chip. I tell her that right now she makes me nothing but disgusted. I know my wife, and I feel that it is only now that she is finally realizing that she has ended us by her actions. Susan is overwhelmed by a wave of anger, and she begins to rage. She screams that I can't do this to her, that I can't take her whole life away from her, that this is not only mine, but her home, that I have no right to kick her out, that she's always supported me, that she raised our children, that... I start to shut down from her accusations, sobbing and yelling. Eventually, she runs out of breath, collapses on the couch, and, shrinking and shaking, breaks into loud sobs. I am not a cruel man, and it is time for me to show her mercy by giving Susan one last blow to end her useless tantrum. I didn't take anything from you. You threw away the best of what we had. There's nothing left here for you anymore. Now go away. I know my wife. Now I think she's finally, for the first time, really gotten to know me.